My name is Emily Carter. I am 41 years old and I live in Sheffield, England. Until recently, my life was completely ordinary. I woke up early every morning, prepared a simple breakfast, went to work, came back home tired, and tried to quiet my mind by watching something familiar on TV. I worked as a logistics coordinator, a job that paid the bills but never truly filled my heart. I believed in God, but from a distance. I prayed when I was afraid. I thanked Him when things worked out. But faith was something I kept neatly placed in a corner of my life, not something that guided my days. Still, there was a quiet emptiness inside me. At night, when everything was silent, I would lie awake, wondering why the world felt so heavy. People were colder. Fear was everywhere. And deep down, a question kept returning. Is something coming that we're not prepared for? I never imagined that the answer would come in the most shocking way possible. And I certainly never imagined that Jesus Himself would speak to me and warn me about what is coming in 2026. Before I tell you what He showed me, I need to take you back to who I was before everything changed. As you listen, write in the comments. Have you ever felt that quiet feeling that something big is about to happen? A normal life with a silent spiritual struggle. From the outside, my life looked stable. I had a steady job, a small apartment, and a routine that never changed. I spoke with my sister every weekend, visited my father when I could, and tried to be responsible. I wasn't reckless, I wasn't lost, but spiritually, I was drifting. I avoided deep questions because they scared me. Whenever conversations turned to faith, end times, or purpose, I would change the subject. It felt easier to stay distracted than to confront the unease growing inside my soul. Sometimes, while walking home from work, I felt an unexplainable pressure in my chest. Not fear exactly, but urgency, as if time itself was speeding up and I was standing still. I remember thinking, if God wanted to speak to me, He would have already. I was wrong, because God was already speaking, through signs I ignored, through warnings I dismissed, and through a moment that would soon stop my heart and change my eternity. Pause for a moment and comment below. Do you feel spiritually prepared for what's coming? Or do you feel distracted like I was? The signs I chose to ignore. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The warnings didn't arrive all at once. They came quietly, almost politely, as if God was giving me chances, again and again, to pay attention. But at the time, I dismissed them as coincidence, stress, or imagination. It began with my sleep. I started waking up at exactly 3 a.m., night after night. Not from fear, not from noise, but suddenly, fully awake, with my heart racing and my mind alert. The room felt heavy, as if the air itself was waiting for something. At first, I checked the clock and rolled over. This is nothing, I told myself, just anxiety. But the feeling didn't leave. Some nights I felt an overwhelming urge to pray, even though I hadn't prayed sincerely in years. I would sit on the edge of my bed, unsure of what to say, whispering words that felt clumsy and incomplete. God, if you're there, please give me peace. Instead of peace, I felt urgency. During the day, strange things happened. Conversations I overheard on buses or in cafes always seemed to circle around fear, darkness, or sudden change. News headlines spoke of instability, division, and events no one could explain. Even strangers would say things like, "Something big is coming." It feels like the world is holding its breath. Each time, my chest tightened. Then came the dreams. They weren't nightmares. They were vivid, heavy with meaning. I would see cities standing still, as if frozen in time. Lights would go out. People would call out for answers that never came. And above it all, a voice, calm, firm, unmistakable, saying, "Prepare." I never saw a face. I never heard a name. And still, I knew. I woke from those dreams shaken, my hands trembling, my pillow damp with tears I didn't remember crying. Yet by morning, logic returned. I told myself I was overworked, overstimulated, too influenced by the news. So I did what many people do. I distracted myself. I worked longer hours. I scrolled endlessly on my phone. I filled every quiet moment with noise so I wouldn't have to sit with the feeling growing inside me, the feeling that my soul was being called. One afternoon, something happened that should have stopped me completely. I was walking home when a stranger approached me, an older woman, gentle eyes, worn coat. She looked directly at me and said without hesitation, You don't have much time to delay what God is asking of you." I froze. Before I could respond, she smiled softly and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there, breathless, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. That night I cried, not from fear, but from confusion. "Why me?" I asked the ceiling. "I'm not special. I'm not faithful enough. I don't even understand you." But deep inside, I felt the truth pressing against my heart. God doesn't call the ready. He prepares the called. Still, I hesitated. Days later, my body began reacting to the weight I was carrying. I felt exhausted even after sleeping. My hands sometimes shook for no reason. There were moments when everything around me felt unreal, as if I was walking through a thin veil separating two worlds. Once, while sitting alone in my apartment, a sudden thought entered my mind, not in my own voice, but firm and clear. "Do not be afraid of what is coming. Be afraid of ignoring it." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. That should have been the moment I surrendered completely. But fear still had power over me. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being judged. Fear of changing my life. So I did what felt safer. I delayed. And here is the truth I need you to hear clearly. Ignoring God doesn't silence him. It only delays obedience and increases urgency. The signs became more intense. Electrical devices malfunctioned around me, streetlights flickered when I passed beneath them. I felt watched, not in a threatening way, but in a protective, attentive way, as if heaven itself was waiting for my response. I began to sense that something irreversible was approaching, not just for me, but for the world. Yet I kept telling myself, tomorrow I'll pray seriously. Next week I'll seek answers. Later. But later never comes when God says now. The final sign arrived on a morning that seemed completely normal. The sky was overcast. The air was still. As I left my apartment, an overwhelming heaviness settled over me. I paused at the door, hand on the handle, suddenly unsure. For a brief moment, a thought crossed my mind. What if I don't come back the same? I laughed nervously, shook it off, and stepped outside. I had no idea that within hours my life would stop, and my soul would be shown a truth I could never unsee. Before we continue, write in the comments, have you ever felt God warning you and chosen to ignore it? The accident that changed everything that morning felt ordinary, and that's what makes it so haunting now. I followed my routine on autopilot. I locked the door behind me, checked my phone, and walked toward the bus stop with my thoughts scattered between work deadlines and the strange heaviness I couldn't shake. The air was cold, unusually still, as if the city itself was holding its breath. I remember thinking, once today is over, everything will feel normal again. I was wrong. The bus arrived late, already crowded. I stood near the middle, holding onto a metal rail, watching the city pass by in blurred fragments through fogged windows. My head felt light, my chest tight, not pain, just pressure. A quiet warning I didn't yet understand. At the third stop, the bus jolted suddenly. There was a sharp sound, metal protesting against momentum, followed by shouting, confusion, and the unmistakable feeling of being thrown forward. Time didn't stop. It stretched. In that suspended moment, I noticed strange details. The flicker of fluorescent lights above me, the sound of someone calling out a name, the sensation of my body no longer responding the way it should. Then came impact. Not violent, not cinematic, just final. And then, silence. The pain I expected never arrived. Instead, there was a sudden release, like slipping out of a tight garment. I felt lighter than I had ever felt in my entire life. I became aware of something impossible. I was above myself. I could see the bus. I could see people moving, frantic, their faces twisted with fear. I saw my body lying still, eyes closed, completely unfamiliar, like a coat I no longer needed. And the strangest part? I wasn't afraid. There was no panic, no regret, no struggle, only clarity. I understood without anyone telling me that my body had stopped, but I had not. Sound faded, replaced by a deep, enveloping quiet. Not emptiness. Peace. A peace so complete it felt alive, intelligent, intentional. As I drifted farther away, the world below grew distant, muted, insignificant. The fear that dominated human life simply didn't exist where I was going. Then, something changed. A warmth began to surround me, not heat, but presence. It felt like being known completely and loved anyway. Every insecurity, every doubt, every failure I had ever carried dissolved instantly. Ahead of me, there was light. Not a brightness that hurt the eyes, but a living radiance that pulsed with meaning. It wasn't coming from a source. It was the source. I moved toward it without effort, without resistance, as if I had been returning to it my entire life. And as I drew closer, memories surfaced. Not as images, but as understanding. I saw moments where I had ignored God's voice, moments where love was offered and I hesitated, moments where I chose comfort over truth, yet there was no condemnation, only truth. And then I heard it. A voice, calm, authoritative, filled with compassion and power beyond anything human. Do not be afraid. Those words didn't just enter my ears, they entered my soul. They carried weight, certainty, and command. Instantly, I knew who was speaking. I didn't need to ask. I didn't need to see his face yet. I knew it was Jesus. The light intensified, forming presence rather than shape. I felt myself kneeling, not because I was told to, but because reverence was the only possible response. Every question I had ever asked melted into one overwhelming realization. He was real. He had always been real, and he had always been near. Then he spoke again. Time is shorter than they think. With those words, the peace remained, but urgency entered it. I sensed that what I was being shown wasn't only about me, it was about the world, about what is coming, about how unprepared humanity is, not materially but spiritually. Images appeared, not chaotic but deliberate. I saw darkness, not symbolic, but tangible. A covering that silenced systems, halted movement, and stripped away false security. I felt fear spreading, not because God caused it, but because people had forgotten how to trust him. Then the words that would follow me back to life. Many will panic because they prepared their homes, but not their hearts. I wanted to speak, to ask questions, to beg to stay. Instead, Jesus' presence moved closer, and with it came instruction. You will return, he said. You will tell them what you saw. You will warn them to prepare, not in fear, but in faith. I felt resistance for the first time. I didn't want to go back. Earth felt heavy, loud, confused. Compared to where I was, it felt like exile. But his voice softened. They must hear it from someone like them. Then everything shifted. The light began to fade, not disappearing, but receding. The peace slowly withdrew, replaced by weight, gravity, and sensation. I felt pulled, not gently, but decisively. The last thing I heard before darkness returned was, "Remember everything." And then, pain. Air forced into my lungs, sounds crashing back all at once, voices shouting, hands pressing against my chest. I gasped, violently, as if returning from a place my body had forgotten how to survive without. I was back. But nothing would ever be the same again. Pause and reflect. Write in the comments. Do you believe the soul continues after the body stops? Or have you never considered it deeply? The exact moment. Everything let go. What happened next is difficult to put into human language, not because it was confusing, but because it was too clear. When my heart stopped, there was a precise instant where I felt a complete separation. Not gradual, not blurry. One moment I was connected to my body, and the next I wasn't. There was no struggle, no sense of suffocating, no fear of pain, no panic. Instead, there was release. It felt like unclenching something I didn't realize I had been holding my entire life. Every physical tension vanished at once. The weight of gravity, the pressure of time, even the constant background noise of human thought, all of it fell away. And in that silence, I understood something instantly. The body is not who we are. It is something we wear. I became aware of myself without limits. I wasn't younger or older. I wasn't defined by memory or personality the way I had been before. I was present, fully awake, more alive than I had ever felt. I could sense the world below me, not visually at first, but intuitively. like knowing a room without needing to look at it. I understood where I was, what had happened, and that my physical life had paused or ended. And strangely, I felt relief. Not relief from suffering, but relief from confusion. For the first time, everything made sense. I saw how much of my life had been shaped by fear I didn't need to carry. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of being wrong. None of it existed where I was now. Then, as awareness expanded, I noticed something else. I wasn't alone. There were presences around me, not human forms, not shadows, but awarenesses. Gentle, attentive. They didn't speak, but they communicated through understanding. They weren't there to interrogate me. They weren't there to accuse me. They were there to guide. I sensed that if I wanted to move, I could. And when that thought formed, movement happened instantly. Not through space, but through intention. Distance meant nothing. As I drifted further from the physical world, something remarkable occurred. Time lost its meaning. There was no before or after. Everything existed in a unified now. This is important for you to understand. Where I was, urgency existed, but not anxiety. Purpose existed, but not pressure. Nothing was rushed, and yet nothing was delayed. Then came what I can only describe as the review, not a judgment, but a revelation. Moments from my life surfaced, not as images playing like a movie, but as feelings tied to choices. I didn't just remember what I had done. I felt the impact of my actions on others. A careless word, a withheld kindness. A moment when I felt prompted to help, and didn't. I felt how those moments rippled outward. But again, there was no condemnation. The understanding was gentle, precise, and honest. Truth without cruelty. I realized something profoundly unsettling and comforting at the same time. God does not judge us the way humans judge. He reveals truth, and truth judges itself. And then, as suddenly as the review began, it ended. The awareness around me shifted. The presence I had felt earlier, the one that radiated authority and compassion, drew closer again. The space seemed to respond to him, not bending, not reacting, aligning. This time, I didn't just sense him, I recognized him, not by appearance, but by essence. Every description I had ever heard, gentle, powerful, merciful, just, fell short. His presence carried certainty, the kind that doesn't argue, the kind that simply is. I felt known completely, not just my actions, my intentions, my fears, my hesitations, the reasons behind my failures, and still, I felt loved. That realization alone was overwhelming. If people truly understood this love, they wouldn't hide from God. They would run toward him. Then he spoke, not loudly, not softly, but clearly. There is a separation coming. Those words didn't echo, they settled. I immediately understood that he wasn't speaking about individuals alone, but about the world. A division that would not be political or geographical, but spiritual. Light and darkness, trust and fear, preparation and distraction. He showed me that many people believe they are ready because they have information, but lack relationship. They know about me, he said, but they do not know me. I felt grief, not his, but humanity's. A sadness for how distracted we have become, how numbed, how confident in systems that cannot save us when everything stops. Then came a knowing that shook me deeply. What is coming will remove illusions. Comfort without foundation. Faith without surrender. Belief without obedience. None of it will stand. But then, hope. A powerful, steady hope. Because those who listen, who prepare their hearts, who choose trust over fear, they will not be abandoned. Tell them, he said, that darkness is not the end. It is a test of where they place their light. I wanted to stay. I felt it deeply now, not as resistance, but longing. The world I had left behind felt fragile, chaotic, unbearably loud compared to this clarity. But I also understood something else. Love returns when it is sent, and I was being sent. As his presence gently withdrew again, I felt the pull, not violent, but unavoidable, like being drawn back into a story that wasn't finished yet. The last understanding I received before sensation returned was this: death is not what people should fear. Being unprepared for truth is, and then the weight returned, the noise returned, the body returned, but the knowing never left. A peace no human language can contain. What followed cannot be measured by time, only by depth. As I moved further away from the weight of the physical world, the first thing that became unmistakably clear was this: peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of God. The peace I entered was not emotional calm, it was not relief. It was not happiness in the way humans define it, it was alignment. Every part of me was finally where it belonged. There was no anxiety because there was no uncertainty, no fear because nothing was hidden, no striving because nothing needed to be proven. I understood, in a way that still humbles me, that most of human suffering comes from separation. Separation from truth, from purpose, from God. And here, that separation did not exist. The peace had substance. It felt alive, intelligent, intentional, aware. It didn't numb my thoughts, it clarified them. It didn't erase my identity, it fulfilled it. I realized something startling. I had spent my entire life searching for peace in circumstances, stability, control, routine, when peace was never meant to be found there. It was always relational. As I rested in that presence, knowledge flowed without words. I understood things instantly that would take lifetimes to explain on earth. I understood why prayers sometimes feel unanswered. I understood why suffering exists without negating love. I understood why urgency and patience can coexist in God. And most importantly, I understood how deeply humanity is loved, even while being profoundly distracted. There was no sense of distance from earth. I could still perceive it, but it no longer defined me. It felt like watching a storm from above the clouds, aware of the chaos, but untouched by it. Then something remarkable happened. I became aware that this peace was not only for me, it was available, not earned, not negotiated, not reserved for the perfect, available to anyone willing to surrender control. This realization carried both comfort and sorrow. Comfort, because salvation is not as complicated as people make it. Sorrow, because so many refuse it out of pride, fear, or distraction. I felt grief again, not overwhelming, but sharp. A grief rooted in love. I sensed how many people are spiritually exhausted, not because life is too hard, but because they are trying to carry what was never meant to be carried alone. Then the peace deepened. It was as if I was being wrapped, not physically, but existentially, in assurance. The kind that says, you are safe, you are seen, you are held. There was no need to speak, yet communication continued. I understood that heaven is not primarily a place. It is order, perfect order, truth without distortion, love without manipulation, authority without cruelty. And I understood why darkness cannot exist there, not because it is rejected violently, but because it cannot survive in the presence of complete truth. Darkness requires confusion. Light eliminates confusion. This is when the contrast between heaven and earth became painfully clear. Earth is loud. Earth is rushed. Earth is saturated with information but starving for wisdom. And yet, earth is where love chooses to work. That truth struck me deeply. I realized that God's patience is not delay, it is mercy. Every extra moment is an invitation. Every unanswered warning is another chance to listen. Then I felt something change within the peace. Not a disturbance, a direction. The calm remained, but focus sharpened, like the moment before a gentle but necessary instruction. I sensed that what I was being shown was not for comfort alone, but for preparation. The peace did not contradict the urgency I had felt earlier. It supported it. That's when I understood something critical. Those who truly experience God's peace are not passive. They are prepared. Peace does not make you careless. It makes you steady. And steadiness will matter when everything else shakes. I saw people, not individually, but collectively, reaching for things that would not hold. Systems, technology, assurances made by other fearful humans. I felt no judgment toward them, only compassion, because I had been one of them. I too had trusted stability more than surrender. Then a clear understanding settled into me. The coming darkness will not only test what people have, it will reveal what they trust. And in that moment, the peace around me became a message in itself. You don't need to fear, it seemed to say, but you do need to choose. Peace is not automatic. It is received. I wanted to stay there forever, to dissolve into that assurance and never return to the noise of human life. But love, I was learning, always moves outward. And with that understanding, I sensed again that my time there was not complete, but it was sufficient. I had been shown what many never allow themselves to experience, what it feels like to be fully surrendered and fully safe. And now, that peace was something I would have to carry back into a world that resists it. Before sensation returned, a final realization crystallized inside me. Peace is not what comes after the storm. It is what allows you to stand while the storm passes. And then, slowly, deliberately, the peace did not disappear. It withdrew, like a tide returning to the ocean, leaving its imprint behind. Enough to remember, enough to share, enough to prepare others. Pause and write in the comments, do you believe true peace comes from control or from surrender? The light that was alive. As the peace gently settled into the background of my awareness, something else became unmistakable. The light. At first, it had seemed like a surrounding presence, warm, steady, reassuring. But now my attention was drawn fully to it, and I realized something that still leaves me without words. The light was alive. This was not illumination the way humans understand it. It didn't come from a source, didn't cast shadows, didn't obey direction. It existed everywhere at once, and yet it was focused, intentional. It wasn't something I was looking at. It was something that was looking at me, and not observing, knowing. The light carried awareness, personality, authority, love, truth, all inseparable. I understood instantly that nothing could be hidden within it, not because it searched, but because it already contained everything. Standing within that light felt like being fully exposed, and completely safe at the same time. On Earth, exposure brings shame. Here, exposure brought freedom. Every layer I had built to protect myself, defensiveness, self-justification, fear of rejection, dissolved naturally. There was no effort involved. The light didn't strip them away. It made them unnecessary. I realized then how much energy humans spend hiding, even from God, and how unnecessary that hiding truly is. Within the light, I didn't feel small. I felt true-sized. I sensed that the light was not only revealing who I was, it was reminding me of who I was meant to be. Not in ambition or achievement, but in alignment. Then something extraordinary happened. The light began to communicate, not with words at first, but with understanding so precise it felt like memory returning. I understood that creation itself responds to this light, that order, beauty, and life flow from it naturally, without force. That chaos is not created by God, but allowed where truth is resisted. This understanding carried weight, because it meant that darkness has limits. Darkness is not equal to light. Darkness is absence, not power. And that's when I understood why fear is such a weapon on Earth. Fear thrives where light is resisted. The light showed me how often humanity mistakes noise for strength and confusion for freedom. How distraction is one of the greatest tools used against spiritual awareness. I saw people surrounded by light, yet turned away from it, eyes fixed on temporary shadows they believed were safer than truth. That realization broke my heart. Then the light intensified, not brighter, but closer. It felt personal now, focused, intentional. And with that closeness came recognition. This light was not separate from the presence I had already encountered. It was Him, not merely surrounding Jesus, but emanating from Him. Not as a display, but as essence. I understood that when people speak of Jesus as the light of the world, they are not speaking metaphorically. They are speaking literally. The light carried authority, not imposed, but absolute. The kind of authority reality itself responds to. And yet, gentleness. I cannot emphasize this enough. Power beyond measure, paired with perfect gentleness. No intimidation, no demand, only invitation. And still, urgency. The light showed me images again, sharper now, more defined. I saw moments when lights would fail, Not symbolically, but physically. Darkness that would interrupt routines and strip away modern dependence. But what struck me most was not the darkness itself. It was how people reacted to it. Some panicked immediately because they had never learned how to be still. Some became angry because control had been taken from them. Some collapsed inward because their hope had been placed in systems now silent. And some, a quiet few, remained steady. Not because they were stronger, because they were anchored. The light showed me that this steadiness would not come from knowing dates or details, but from relationship, from trust built long before the darkness arrived. Then I understood something crucial. The light does not disappear during darkness. It becomes more visible. Darkness does not overcome light. It reveals where light truly is. The light then impressed something upon me that felt like instruction. Tell them not to fear the dark, but to fear being unprepared to trust. I felt the truth of this settle deeply into me. The coming events would not be designed to destroy faith, but to expose it, to reveal what was genuine and what was borrowed, what was rooted and what was superficial. The light showed me that many would cling to objects, supplies, and plans, believing preparation was purely external. But the most essential preparation would be internal: trust, repentance, humility, surrender. Without those, even the most stocked house would feel empty. Then came a moment of piercing clarity. The light made me aware that time was accelerating, not literally, but perceptually. That humanity is approaching a narrowing window where choosing becomes unavoidable. Neutrality would no longer be an option. Not choosing the light is itself a choice. That understanding was heavy, but it was not hopeless, because the light was still offering itself, still inviting, still waiting. I felt again the desire to remain there, within that living brilliance, where truth is effortless and love is complete. But I also felt the pull toward return growing stronger. Before that happened, the light impressed one final understanding into me, not as a warning, but as a promise. Those who belong to the light will never be abandoned, even when everything else goes dark. That truth anchored itself in me like a seal, and then gently the light began to recede, not fading, not diminishing, simply allowing distance. Enough to return, enough to remember, enough to speak. Because the light did not need me to stay, it needed me to go back and tell. Pause and reflect. Write in the comments, if everything went dark tomorrow, what would you trust first? Your supplies or your faith? The moment I stood before Jesus. There are moments that redefine everything that comes after them. Standing before Jesus was one of those moments, not because of fear, but because of truth. As the living light receded just enough for awareness to sharpen, I realized I was no longer merely surrounded by his presence. I was before him, intentionally, personally, unmistakably. This was not an encounter meant to impress. It was an encounter meant to reveal. I did not see him the way paintings portray him. There was no dramatic posture, no exaggerated gesture. What struck me first was his stillness. A stillness so complete it felt like the center point of all motion. Everything aligned around him. Time, understanding, purpose. I felt my awareness lower, not in humiliation, but in recognition. Reverence rose naturally, without instruction. It wasn't something I did. It was something truth caused. His eyes met mine. And in that instant, I understood something that words will always fail to capture. Jesus does not look at who you pretend to be. He looks at who you actually are and who you are becoming. There was no scan, no analysis, no hesitation. I felt known in a way no human had ever known me. Every prayer I prayed without words, every doubt I buried, every fear I disguised as logic. Nothing shocked him, nothing repelled him. That realization alone broke something open inside me. I had spent my life afraid of disappointing God, when all along he had been patiently waiting for me to stop hiding. I felt exposed and safe. That combination is rare on earth. Here, it was natural. I wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain, to justify the years of hesitation and half-belief, but the desire dissolved before it could form. He already knew. An explanation was unnecessary. What mattered now was attention. When he spoke, it wasn't loud, but it carried weight beyond volume. His voice didn't echo. It settled. You are here because you listened, even when you didn't understand. Those words pierced me, because I hadn't felt obedient. I had felt confused, delayed, resistant. Yet he named listening where I had only seen hesitation. That's when I understood something vital. God measures willingness differently than humans do. Then he showed me moments from my life. Not failures, but intersections. Times when I could have turned fully toward him, and didn't. Times when I felt the pull, and stepped away. I braced myself, expecting disappointment. Instead, I felt compassion. Not pity, not indulgence, understanding. You are not alone in this, he said. Many feel the call before they understand the cost. That truth carried both comfort and warning, because I sensed clearly that the cost is increasing. Then his presence shifted, not away from me, but outward, as if widening the lens. I saw people, not faces, conditions. I saw distraction masquerading as freedom. I saw certainty built on fragile assumptions. I saw faith treated like a concept rather than a relationship. And I felt grief. Not anger, not condemnation, grief born of love. Many prepare their lives, he said, but few prepare their hearts. Those words echoed deeper than anything I had heard before. I understood that preparation is not about knowledge alone, not about warnings, dates, or speculation. It is about alignment. Then he showed me something that shook me deeply. I saw darkness, again, but closer now, more imminent, not symbolic, not distant. I saw how it would come quietly, not announced, not dramatic, interrupting routines and exposing dependency. But the most unsettling part was not the darkness itself. It was the confusion. People would ask, why didn't anyone warn us? And I felt the weight of responsibility press against me. You will tell them, he said, not as a request, as a calling. I felt resistance rise inside me, immediate, human, familiar. I'm not ready, I wanted to say. I'm not strong enough. They won't listen. But before I could form the words, he answered them. They won't all listen, he said calmly, but some will. And then, with gentle firmness, that is enough. Those words reframed everything. Success was not measured by response, but by obedience. Then he spoke of the coming days, not with fear, but with clarity. He explained that darkness would serve as a divider, not between good and evil in the obvious sense, but between trust and panic, between rooted faith and borrowed belief. He made it clear that the darkness would not be a punishment, but a revelation. What people truly trust will surface when everything else is stripped away. Then came the part that still echoes in me every day. You must tell them what truly matters, he said. Not everything, only what is essential. I felt understanding begin to form, structured, deliberate. There were items, yes, but more than that, there were priorities, foundations, anchors, what people would reach for when everything stopped. He impressed upon me that the message must be clear, urgent, and grounded in hope, not fear. Fear closes hearts, he said. Truth opens them. I realized then that my role was not to convince, but to witness, to speak what I had seen, to share what I had been given, to leave the response in God's hands. As the encounter drew toward its end, I felt a mixture of reluctance and resolve. I did not want to leave his presence, but I understood why I must. Before the pull toward return became undeniable, he looked at me once more, and this time, there was something unmistakable in his gaze. Expectation, not pressure, not demand, trust. You will remember, he said, and you will speak, even when it is uncomfortable. Then, with a softness that carried authority, go. The moment he said it, everything shifted. The space changed. The clarity narrowed. The weight of the physical world began to return. But something had been sealed within me, a knowing that could not be undone. I had stood before Jesus, and I could never again pretend that faith was optional, distant, or theoretical. It was now personal, and it was now urgent. Pause and write in the comments. If Jesus asked you to speak the truth, Even if not everyone listened, would you obey? The revelation of the 3 days of darkness. When Jesus spoke of the darkness, he did not speak in mystery. He spoke with clarity, calm, deliberate, and precise. It was not meant to frighten me. It was meant to prepare me. As his words settled into my awareness, I realized this was the heart of what I had been brought there to understand. Everything before this moment, the peace, the light, the encounter, had been preparation for this revelation. The darkness will come, he said, but not as they imagine. Immediately, I understood that many would expect chaos to arrive with noise, explosions, alarms, visible collapse. But what he showed me was different. It would begin quietly. Ordinary routines would be interrupted. Electric lights would fail. Systems people trusted without question would suddenly stop responding. Not everywhere at once, but enough to unsettle the illusion of control. And then, darkness. Not only the absence of light, but the absence of certainty. I saw homes filled with silence, streets frozen in stillness, people waiting for instructions that would never come. The darkness was not just physical, it was psychological. People would realize how dependent they had become, not only on technology, but on constant reassurance, on noise, on motion, on distraction. When all of that vanished, what remained would rise to the surface. Fear for some, anger for others, faith for a few. Jesus showed me that these days would feel longer than time itself, not because of duration, but because of intensity. 3 days measured by clocks, but by hearts, they would feel eternal. I asked, not in words, but in understanding. Why? Why allow this? Why not warn more directly? Why not prevent it altogether? His response was immediate. Because what is built on illusion must be revealed. I understood then that this darkness was not designed to destroy, but to expose. It would expose false security, expose shallow belief, expose where trust truly lives. People would discover in those days what they had been leaning on all along. Some would turn inward and break. Some would turn outward and blame. Some would finally, desperately, look upward. And heaven would not be silent. Jesus made it clear that God would not abandon those who called on him, but the difference would be stark between those who had cultivated relationship and those who treated faith as emergency equipment. This part struck me deeply. Many will try to reach for me for the first time, he said, but fear will make it hard for them to hear. Fear does not block God's presence, but it distorts perception. That is why preparation must come before the darkness. Not because God is unreachable during crisis, but because trust must already exist for peace to take root. I saw people lighting candles, not just for visibility, but for comfort. I saw families huddled together, some praying with confidence, others speaking words they had never practiced before. And I saw something heartbreaking. People who believed they were ready, because they had supplies, information, plans, suddenly realizing that none of those things could calm their souls. Jesus was clear. These days will not test what they own. They will test what they believe. I understood then why he had emphasized essentials, not excess, not accumulation, not fear-driven preparation. Essentials, because simplicity would matter. The darkness would slow everything down. Force stillness, remove options. And in stillness, truth becomes loud. Jesus showed me that those who had cultivated inner light would not be overwhelmed. They would feel the gravity of the moment, yes, but not panic. They would become anchors for others. Calm voices in the silence, steady hands in the uncertainty, lights where no electricity remained. This is when he impressed something critical upon me. The darkness will amplify whatever is already inside them. Fear will grow louder in fearful hearts. Faith will grow stronger in faithful ones. No one would be neutral. Then he showed me something that surprised me. The darkness would not be universal in experience, though it would be widespread in impact. Some would endure it physically, others would endure it spiritually, but all would be affected. And when the light returned, because it would return, the world would not simply go back to the way it was. Something would be different. Some hearts would be softened, some hardened, some awakened. The darkness would act like a line drawn quietly across time, separating before and after. I felt the weight of this revelation settle heavily into me. How will they know? I wondered. How will they be ready? Jesus answered without hesitation. They will know because they were told. That's when I realized the responsibility being placed into my hands, and into the hands of anyone willing to speak. Warning is not about control, it is about love. To warn is to care enough to risk being dismissed. Jesus emphasized again that fear-based messages would do more harm than good. The purpose was not to terrify, but to awaken. Tell them to prepare with wisdom, he said, but above all, to prepare with trust. The darkness would be survivable physically for many, but spiritually devastating for those who had built nothing beneath their beliefs. And then came the clarity that anchored everything. These days will pass, he said, but what they reveal will remain. I understood then that the darkness was not the main event. It was the mirror. A mirror humanity would not be able to avoid. As the revelation ended, I felt urgency rise again. Not panic, but focus. This was not a message for curiosity. It was a message for readiness. And readiness did not mean obsession. It meant alignment. Before the pull toward return strengthened again, Jesus impressed one final truth upon me regarding the darkness. Those who walk with me do not need to fear the night, because they carry the light within them. That truth followed me back. It still does. Pause and write in the comments. If the world went silent for 3 days, what do you think would rise up inside you first? Fear or faith? The 5 essential items. Jesus revealed. When Jesus began to speak about the essentials, I expected something practical. Objects, tools, supplies. What he revealed was far deeper. Yes, there will be items, he said, but what makes them essential is not what they are. It is why they are held. I understood immediately. Without the right foundation, even useful things become empty. The first essential was shown to me not as an object, but as a state of the heart. 1. A heart anchored in trust. Jesus made this unmistakably clear. Fear would be the greatest enemy during the darkness. Not lack, not silence, not uncertainty. A fearful heart cannot hear, he said. I saw people surrounded by information but unable to rest. Their thoughts raced, their emotions spiraled, and even truth spoken to them felt distant. Then I saw others, fewer, whose hearts were steady. Not because they knew more, but because they trusted more. Trust was not passive, it was practiced. Those hearts had been trained long before the darkness arrived, through prayer, humility, and surrender. This is the first essential, Jesus said, because without it, everything else will fail. I understood then that no external preparation could compensate for inner chaos. Trust would act as a filter, keeping fear from overwhelming the soul. 2. Living light in the home. This was the first item that appeared physically. I saw simple sources of light, small, steady, intentional. Not excessive, not elaborate, just enough to illuminate a room and calm the mind. But Jesus emphasized something important. The light is not only for sight, it is for remembrance. Light would remind people that darkness is temporary, that fear does not have the final word, that stillness does not mean abandonment. I saw families gathering around light, not panicking, but speaking quietly, praying, comforting one another. The light became a symbol of presence, both human and divine. Light steadies the mind, he said, and a steady mind can choose faith. 3. Words that have already been planted. This essential surprised me. Jesus showed me people trying to search for truth during the darkness, reaching for guidance they had never internalized. Their anxiety made it hard to focus. Their fear made it hard to discern. Then he showed me others, people who had already planted words of truth within themselves. Scripture remembered, prayers practiced, truth spoken aloud before it was needed. These words will rise up, he said, when everything else is quiet. I understood then why preparation could not be rushed at the last moment. What is planted grows, but what is unplanted cannot appear suddenly. This essential was not about memorization alone, but familiarity, relationship with truth, not emergency reliance. 4. Simple provision, without obsession. Jesus then addressed physical needs, but carefully. I saw simple provisions, not excess, not hoarding, enough to remove panic, enough to allow stillness. Preparation should calm the heart, he said, not feed fear. He showed me that obsession with accumulation would distract people from what truly mattered. Anxiety-driven preparation would become another form of fear. Those who prepared with wisdom and moderation would feel peace. Those who prepared compulsively would still feel empty. The essential was not what was stored, but why. Was it trust or control? 5. Community, even in silence. The final essential was one I did not expect to feel so strongly. Jesus showed me people who were physically alone, yet spiritually connected, and others who were surrounded by people, yet isolated by fear. Do not face the darkness alone if you do not have to, he said. Community did not mean crowds. It meant connection, a family, a trusted friend, someone to pray with, someone to listen. Even quiet companionship would matter. I saw how isolation magnified fear, while shared stillness multiplied peace. This essential was about presence, not conversation. Simply knowing you were not alone. After showing me the 5 essentials, Jesus was very clear about something. These are not guarantees against difficulty, he said. They are anchors. The darkness would still be uncomfortable. Silence would still be heavy. Waiting would still test patience, but those anchored would not be overcome. Then he impressed one final understanding upon me. These essentials are not only for those days, he said. They are for the life that leads up to them. That truth reframed everything. This was not a checklist for survival. It was an invitation to realignment. I realized that those who live this way daily would barely need to adjust when the darkness arrived, because their lives were already ordered differently. Fear would not suddenly take them by surprise. Stillness would not feel unfamiliar. Trust would not feel forced. The 5 essentials were not about preparation for catastrophe. They were about preparation for truth. And truth, once revealed, changes everything. Before the vision moved on, Jesus left me with a question, not spoken aloud, but placed directly into my understanding. Which of these do they already have, and which are they delaying? That question followed me back. It still follows me now. Pause and write in the comments. Which of these 5 do you feel strongest in, and which one do you need to begin preparing today? The mission I was given. After the essentials were revealed, I felt something shift within me. Not around me, inside me. The atmosphere remained calm, steady, filled with presence, but now there was direction. Purpose sharpened. The experience was no longer only about what I was being shown. It was about what I was being sent to do. Jesus did not rush this moment. He allowed understanding to settle fully, as if making sure that what followed would not be misunderstood or diluted by emotion. Then he spoke with a clarity that carried both gentleness and authority. You will return with this. Not if, not maybe. You will. I felt the weight of that statement immediately. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't forceful. It was certain. I realized then that being shown truth creates responsibility. Once you see clearly, neutrality disappears. Silence becomes a choice. And this mission was not about status, recognition, or influence. It was about obedience. You are not sent because you are strong, he said. You are sent because you are willing. That sentence dismantled every excuse I was about to raise. I had already begun listing them internally. I'm not trained, I'm not confident, I don't speak well, they won't believe me. He addressed them before I could voice them. You do not need to convince, he said. You need to testify. That distinction changed everything. Convincing depends on reaction. Testifying depends on truth. My role was not to manage outcomes, but to speak faithfully what I had been given. Then he showed me something deeply humbling. I saw myself returning to ordinary life. The same streets, the same routines, the same world, but I would not be the same. I saw moments where I would hesitate, wanting to stay quiet, to blend in, to avoid discomfort. And I saw moments where the urge to speak would rise stronger than fear. Speak then, he said. I understood that the mission would not always be public or dramatic. Sometimes it would be quiet conversations. Sometimes it would be writing. Sometimes it would simply be refusing to dismiss truth when it was inconvenient. The mission was not a performance. It was faithfulness over time. Jesus made it clear that not everyone would respond well. Some would mock, some would dismiss. Some would twist the message into fear or speculation. And that mattered, but not in the way I expected. Do not measure success by agreement, he said. Measure it by obedience. I felt relief at those words, because I had already sensed that approval would not be guaranteed, but alignment would be. Then he showed me something that surprised me deeply. I saw people who would hear the message long before the darkness and do nothing. I also saw people who would hear it once, at just the right moment, and respond immediately. Timing mattered. Seeds would be planted now, but some would only grow later. That's when I understood that this mission was not about urgency alone. It was about patience. Patience to speak without forcing. Patience to warn without controlling. Patience to trust God with what happens next. Then Jesus impressed something important upon me. Fear-based warnings will close hearts, he said. Hope-filled truth will open them. This mattered deeply. The message was not meant to terrorize people about darkness, but to invite them into light before darkness made that invitation harder to accept. I understood that my tone mattered. My posture mattered. My motives mattered. Truth spoken without love becomes noise. Love spoken without truth becomes comfort without anchor. The mission required both. I felt again the human resistance rise. What if I fail? What if I forget? What if I change over time? His response was immediate. You will remember what you need, he said, and when you forget, I will remind you. That assurance carried peace. The mission did not depend on my perfection. It depended on faithfulness. Then he showed me the cost. Not suffering, but discomfort. Being misunderstood. Being questioned. Being labeled. I saw moments where staying silent would be easier, and moments where silence would feel unbearable. Choose truth over comfort, he said. Always. That sentence marked me, because comfort had guided many of my past choices, and I knew that following this mission would require surrendering that instinct. Then something unexpected happened. He showed me you, not individually, but collectively. People watching, listening, reading. People at different stages of belief, some skeptical, some curious, some already sensing urgency but unsure why. And I felt something overwhelming. Compassion, not pressure, not superiority, love. I understood then that this mission was not about announcing disaster, but about inviting return. Return to trust, return to stillness, return to relationship. Jesus was very clear. Tell them they are not too late, he said, but they must not delay. That balance, hope, and urgency defined everything. As the mission settled into me, I felt the pull toward return grow stronger. The clarity began to narrow, as if preparing me to re-enter a world that would feel louder, faster, and less certain than before. Before that happened, Jesus spoke one final instruction regarding the mission. Do not add to this, he said, and do not remove from it. Speak what was given, nothing more, nothing less. Truth does not need embellishment. Then, with a softness that felt deeply personal, he said, You will be afraid sometimes. That honesty surprised me. But fear will no longer rule you, he continued, because you have seen what waits beyond it. That was the moment I realized something profound. The mission was not only about preparing others, it was about transforming me. As the pull toward my body became undeniable, the space began to shift again. Sensation approached. Weight returned in the distance. But the mission did not fade. It anchored. I was being sent back, not to escape darkness, but to speak light into it. Returning to the body and learning how to live again. The return was not gentle. It was necessary, but it was jarring. After the stillness, the clarity, the weightless knowing, the first sensation that came back to me was heaviness. Not emotional, physical. As if gravity itself had been turned up, pressing every part of me downward at once. Then came sound. Not gradually, all at once. Voices overlapping, metal clattering. Someone calling out urgently. Air forced into my lungs burned like fire. My chest convulsed as if my body was remembering how to exist. I gasped, coughed, and felt pain. Sharp, immediate, undeniable. I was back, and I did not want to be. The peace I had known moments before felt impossibly far away, like waking from the most beautiful dream into a world that suddenly felt harsh and loud. Hands were on me. Someone was speaking quickly. I could see faces above me, but they looked distorted, unreal, as if I was viewing life through thick glass. My body trembled uncontrollably. I wasn't afraid. I was disoriented. It felt like being poured back into a container that no longer fit. As my awareness stabilized, a crushing realization settled in. I remembered everything. The light, the voice, the mission. And now, I was trapped inside a body that felt unbearably fragile compared to where I had just been. Tears came without warning, not from pain, not from fear, from grief. Grief at having left a place where nothing was hidden, where love was complete, where peace did not have to be defended. The physical world felt muted, dim, incomplete. In the days that followed, recovery was slow, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. Doctors spoke, tests were run, explanations were offered. I listened politely, nodded, and thanked them. But I knew what had happened to me could not be reduced to biology alone. My body healed faster than my spirit adjusted. I found myself overwhelmed by ordinary things, bright lights, loud conversations, meaningless chatter. It all felt too much, too shallow, too rushed. At night, I lay awake, staring into the darkness, feeling an ache that had no name. I missed the presence. I missed the clarity. I missed the feeling of being fully known. And yet, I remembered why I was back. The mission pressed gently but persistently against my heart. You will tell them. That sentence echoed through everything. Still, the struggle was real. How do you speak about light to people who have never seen it? How do you describe peace to a world addicted to noise? How do you return to normal life after standing in eternal truth? Some days, I doubted myself. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe stress played tricks on my mind. Maybe I misunderstood. But then the knowing would return, steady, unshakable. Truth does not fade. It waits. Physically, my body felt weaker than before. But spiritually, I felt exposed in a way I had never experienced. The things that once distracted me no longer worked. Entertainment felt empty. Small talk felt exhausting. I became acutely aware of how much energy people spend avoiding silence. And I understood why. Silence forces confrontation, not with darkness, but with truth. I began praying again, not out of habit, but out of necessity. Not formal prayers, honest ones. Help me, I whispered often. I don't know how to live here anymore. And slowly, very slowly, something changed. The peace I had known beyond my body did not fully return, but traces of it did, in quiet moments, in stillness, in obedience. I realized then that peace was not meant to remove me from the world. It was meant to steady me within it. The mission did not begin with public speaking or grand declarations. It began with small acts of courage, choosing not to stay silent when fear rose, choosing to listen when others spoke from confusion, choosing to live differently, more intentionally, more humbly, more awake. There were days when the weight of what I had seen felt unbearable. Knowing what was coming, and knowing how unprepared many were, pressed heavily on me. I wanted to shake people and say, "Wake up," but I remembered the instruction. Fear closes hearts, truth opens them. So I learned patience. I learned to speak when prompted, and to remain quiet when silence was wiser. Not every moment required a warning, but every moment required faithfulness. The most difficult part of returning was this. The world expected me to be the same, to resume routines, to prioritize the same things, to care about what I once cared about, but I couldn't. Once you've seen how thin the veil truly is, pretending it's solid becomes impossible. I felt like a stranger in my own life, and yet, I was not abandoned. In moments of doubt, I felt a quiet reassurance. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to keep going. You are where you are meant to be. That sentence carried me through the hardest days. The struggle to live again was not about survival. It was about integration. Learning how to carry eternity in a temporary body. Learning how to speak light without arrogance. learning how to warn without condemning. And slowly, purpose replaced grief. I began to understand that returning was not a punishment. It was an honor. Because not everyone who sees is sent back. And that realization humbled me deeply. I didn't come back to escape the darkness. I came back to stand in it without fear. And now, every breath, every word, every choice carried weight. Because time was no longer something I assumed. It was something I respected. The transformation and the final call. What changed in me was not sudden. It was irreversible. I did not return with answers to every question. I returned with clarity about what matters. The transformation did not make my life easier. In many ways, it made it heavier, because awareness carries responsibility. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you know, you cannot pretend. But it also made my life steadier. Fear no longer ruled my decisions. Urgency no longer felt chaotic. Faith was no longer theoretical. It was lived. I stopped asking, "What if?" and started asking, "What am I being faithful with today?" Small choices became sacred. How I spoke, what I tolerated, where I placed my attention. I understood then that transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming aligned. Aligned with truth. Aligned with purpose. Aligned with time. Because time, I now knew, is not endless. The world continued as it always had. Loud, distracted, divided. But I moved through it differently. I listened more. I spoke more carefully. I prayed more honestly. And slowly, opportunities to share the message appeared. Not forced, not dramatic, but timely. Conversations that opened naturally. Moments where silence felt wrong. Questions asked by people who didn't know why they were asking. I learned something important. People are more spiritually aware than they admit. They are just afraid of what awareness might cost them. So I did not push. I invited. I spoke of preparation, not with panic, but with peace. I spoke of darkness, not as doom, but as revelation. I spoke of faith, not as religion, but as relationship. And I watched something happen. Some people dismissed it immediately. Some changed the subject. Some grew uncomfortable. But some, quietly, seriously, listened. Those moments made everything worth it. Because the mission was never about reaching everyone. It was about reaching whoever would listen. The transformation also changed how I viewed the coming days. I no longer obsessed over timelines. I no longer searched for constant confirmation. I prepared, but I did not panic, because preparation rooted in fear leads to exhaustion. Preparation rooted in trust leads to peace. I began to understand that the darkness, when it comes, will not define who we are. It will reveal who we have been becoming all along. And that realization brought me to you. If you are hearing this now, it is not an accident. You may feel curiosity. You may feel skepticism. You may feel that quiet inner tension that says, something about this feels important. Pay attention to that. Because urgency does not always arrive as fear. Sometimes it arrives as recognition. I am not here to tell you to abandon your life. I am not here to tell you to panic or withdraw from the world. I am here to ask you something far more important. If everything familiar stopped for a moment, where would your trust go first? Would it go to systems that require constant power? Would it go to information that changes daily? Or would it go to something deeper, something unshakable? Preparation is not about stockpiling fear. It is about ordering priorities. The 5 essentials I was shown were not secrets. They were reminders. Trust before panic. Light before despair. Truth before confusion. Wisdom before excess. Connection before isolation. None of those require permission. All of them require intention. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to know everything. But you do need to begin. Begin paying attention. Begin simplifying. Begin practicing stillness. Begin strengthening faith before it is tested. Because when darkness comes, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, what you have practiced will rise automatically. Fear grows when it is rehearsed. Faith grows when it is practiced. And now I want to speak to you directly. Do not wait until fear forces you to look for God. Choose to look now, while peace is still possible. The days ahead will not ask what you intended to do. They will reveal what you have already chosen. And here is the most important truth I brought back with me. No one who truly turns toward the light is ever abandoned. Not in darkness, not in uncertainty, not in silence. You are not too late, but delaying has a cost. So I ask you, and I mean this sincerely, write in the comments right now. Which of the 5 essentials do you feel God calling you to strengthen first? Naming it matters. Speaking it matters. And if this message stirred something in you, even confusion, do not ignore that. Subscribe to this channel, because what is coming next is not about fear. It is about preparation, clarity, and hope. More messages will follow. More understanding will come. And you are not meant to walk this season alone. Stay alert. Stay grounded. Stay anchored. Because light does not disappear in darkness. It becomes visible. Thank you for listening. And thank you for choosing to prepare, not in fear, but in faith.